Welcome to an era-defining moment in geopolitics. The US and China, two superpowers with contrasting ideologies, economies, and strategies, are locked in a complex rivalry with global implications. In this video, we'll explore what's driving the new Cold War and how it's shaping trade, technology, and security worldwide. So, let's start with the economic front of the Cold War. The trade relationship between US and China remains one of the world's most largest, with bilateral trade totaling approximately around $700 billion in 2023. But economic tensions remain high, driven by US concerns about trade imbalances and allegations of intellectual property theft. The US began imposing tariffs on Chinese goods in 2018, reaching about $550 billion worth of tariffs by 2022. In response, China imposed its own tariffs on US imports, affecting industries from agriculture to manufacturing. Despite multiple rounds of negotiations, the trade deficit continues, with the US importing around $350 billion more from China than it exports. While the US seeks to decouple and reduce reliance on Chinese goods, China's Belt and Road Initiative aims to create alternative economic ties. The infrastructure program has seen investments in over 140 countries, with a projected total investments of up to $8 trillion, connecting markets across Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America. Critics argue that the BRI is a form of economic imperialism, increasing China's leverage over participating countries, especially those with high debt burdens. Technology is at the core of US-China tensions. This includes everything from AI development to semiconductor production. The US and China combined spent an estimated $100 billion on AI research in 2023 alone, highlighting the critical importance of this technology for both nations' future. In addition, the semiconductor industry is a flashpoint in tech rivalry. The US has imposed export controls on advanced semiconductors and chip-making equipment to prevent Chinese companies from accessing leading-edge technologies. Semiconductors are crucial for military applications, AI, and consumer electronics, and in 2023, the US CHIPS Act allocated $52 billion to bolster domestic semiconductor manufacturing. Meanwhile, China's Made in China 2025 initiative aims to make China a leader in high-tech industries, reducing its dependence on foreign technology by ramping up investments in sectors like AI, aerospace, and robotics. Chinese tech giants such as Huawei and Alibaba are forefront, with Huawei notably advancing in 5G technology. As of 2024, Huawei has secured over 60% of the global 5G market, building networks from Europe to Africa, despite US efforts to limit its reach. The Indo-Pacific region has become a focal point of military posturing for both the US and China. In recent years, US has strengthened its alliance with regional partners through AUKUS, a security pact with Australia and UK, and through expanded defense ties with Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. China, on the other hand, has increased its military spending, currently stands second only to US. China's defense budget grew to $230 billion in 2024, supporting its goal of modernizing its military by 2035. The South China Sea has become a flashpoint, with China claiming most of its strategic waterway despite international legal ruling to the contrary. The US routinely conducts freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's territorial claims. China has also militarized several islands, building airstrips, deploying radar systems, and positioning anti-aircraft missile systems. The US sees these actions as an aggressive move to assert control over the South China Sea, through which approximately $5.3 trillion worth of trade flows each year. The Taiwan Strait remains the most dangerous flashpoint in the US-China relationship. China views Taiwan as a breakaway province, while Taiwan maintains a separate democratic government. The US has long supported Taiwan's self-defense capabilities, although it adheres to policy of strategic ambiguity regarding military intervention. Recent data reveals that US arms sales to Taiwan have increased significantly, reaching approximately $20 billion in 2023. China has responded with military drills near Taiwan, increasing its presence in Taiwan Strait. As a major producer of semiconductor, Taiwan industry holds strategic importance. Its companies like TSMC controls over 50% of the global semiconductor market. Any conflict over Taiwan would have significant global economic repercussions, particularly for tech industry which relies heavily on Taiwanese semiconductors. Unlike the original Cold War where countries chose between capitalism and communism, today many nations in the global south are trying to balance relationship with both the US and China. This includes major economies like India, Brazil, and Indonesia. Countries in the global south are crucial to China's Belt and Road Initiative and its trade network expansion, which is expected to reach over $1 trillion in investments in Latin America alone. The BRICS alliance, a coalition of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has expanded in influence, is projected to have combined GDP of $25 trillion by 2025, rivaling that of the G7. While the US strengthens alliance with NATO and in the Indo-Pacific, China fosters relationship with BRIC countries which are emerging as alternate bloc to Western alliance. While this Cold War is not strictly ideological, there is an underlying ideological competition. The US promotes democracy and rule-based international order, whereas China emphasizes national sovereignty and a non-interventionist approach, resonating with many countries wary of Western influence. This ideological divide influences each superpower's foreign policy, creating subtle but impactful competition over governance model. But despite the intense rivalry, climate change is one area where the US and China share common interests. The world's two largest greenhouse gas emitters, China contributing about 30% and the US roughly 15%. Both nations recognize the need for action. In 2023, China and the US resumed climate talks, focusing on cooperation in renewable energy development, emissions reduction, and sustainable technology. China leads in solar energy, producing nearly 80% of world's photovoltaic panels, while the US has made significant advancement in EV productions, with EV sales expected to reach 50% of new car sales by 2030. Cooperation on climate change could serve as a buffer in intense rivalry, as both nations have a vested interest in reducing global warming risks. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has also impacted the dynamics between US and China. Although China claims neutrality, it has maintained economic ties with Russia, becoming one of its primary buyers of oil and natural gas, and increasing bilateral trade by 30% in 2023. Meanwhile, the US and its allies have imposed heavy sanctions on Russia, isolating Moscow economically but pushing it closer to Beijing. This relationship raises concerns in Washington as it signals a shift towards a multipolar world order. Russia's alignment with China gives Beijing greater leverage, especially in areas like energy security and military cooperation. Although China has refrained from directly supporting Russia's action in Ukraine, its informal alignment suggests that a shared interest in countering Western influence. The US-China rivalry is shaping up to be one of the most consequential conflicts of the 21st century. From the trade war to the tech race, the South China Sea to Taiwan and the ideological divide. This competition impacts nearly every corner of the globe. As both nations continue to assert their interests, the question remains, Will this Cold War lead to a managed rivalry, or will it escalate into something more dangerous? This new Cold War may not mirror the exact dynamics of the US Soviet conflict, but its outcome will influence everything from technological advances to global security, the climate policies, and economic resilience. Let's continue to watch, learn, and understand how these shifts will affect the world. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more in depth geopolitical analysis.